This is an analysis of the movie Ratatouille. First thing we're going to address is setting. Setting has to do with where and when the story takes place. And in this case, the movie takes place in Paris mostly, and in the Paris sewers at one point early in the movie. To be more specific, it takes place in a restaurant that the former master chef Gusteau owned. And a lot of the action takes place at the kitchen and has to do with the preparation of food. Bear in mind that this is not the real world. This is a fantasy world where rats act much like humans and can communicate with humans to some extent. But this world is modeled upon the real world. We are skipping to characters now, starting with Remy. Remy is a young mouse who has got superior abilities as a chef. He loves food and different flavors. He is a master chef. He starts out as an adventurous little rascal, and at the beginning, Gusteau's cookbook literally becomes his savior. He floats and paddles on it through the Paris sewers. He sees hope in the relationship between humans and rats, even though his father shows him a bunch of rat corpses killed by humans. That is a horrendous sight for him, but he still claims that humans and rats can be friends to some degree. His friendship with Linguine seems strong, but at one point fails, but they become friends again later. Linguine. His name is taken from a type of pasta. This boy is not a good chef. He starts out as a kind of a douche, a good-for-nothing, weird, no-talented guy who has gotten fired from many jobs. Although he is persistent and a kind-hearted boy. He cares for Remy, and so he has a talent anyway, human emotions, being able to care, even to love someone. And that is indeed a very important talent in our time. In a way, you could say that Linguine starts out as the rat in the kitchen, because he gets a position as a garbage boy there. Colette works at the restaurant as a cook. She becomes Linguine's kitchen trainer. Linguine falls in love with her. She doesn't like the idea that Linguine is taking the advices of a rat, but she later changes her mind. Anton Ego is nicknamed the Grim Eater, which is similar to the Grim Reaper, aka Death. So we understand that he is a cold person, evil maybe the bad guy of the movie. Ego is the single cause that made the Gusteau restaurant lose one of its 5 stars. He seems to be very arrogant, sort of thinking he's better than anybody else. Unable to be anything but picky and demanding, he is not a pleasant person. He's also a bit mystical, and he looks scary. But at the end we see him from a new angle, that of a happy food lover, which is what he most essentially is. Ego changes towards the end of the movie. When he tastes Remy's ratatouille, he drops his pen to the ground, becomes a pure food lover, and stops being a critic. And so he loses his job, but seemingly he becomes happy, because he can enjoy the ratatouille more often in Remy and Linguine's new bistro. Maybe he learned that good food is not only something that is made by picky gourmet cooks, but also can be made by common people who love the ones they are cooking for and who cooks with love. Like his own mother back when he was a child. And that is exactly why Gusteau says that everyone can cook. Chef Gusteau, or the ghost of Gusteau, or a phantom of him, is haunting the mind of Remy. Is it Remy imagining him, or is it a real ghost? Is Remy mad? Maybe all great persons to some degree are mad. Maybe it lies in their nature. No matter, Gusteau is helping Remy during the movie, giving him advices and in a way functioning as his conscience, because he tells him stuff like, not to steal. So he functions as his conscience. Skinner, the Iron Chef that runs the restaurant and who produces fast food using the Gusto logo and trademark. This is a smart person and also a bit insidious. He tries to get answers from Linguine by getting him drunk, and he also captures Remy. So his methods are a bit cruel. Emile, Remy's brother, is a bit dumb, and he is not a food lover in the sense that he loves different types of food. First and foremost, he likes to eat an abundance of food, even if it's only garbage. Some other minor characters include Django, Remy's father, who also acts like a general, and his sons and daughters, the mice, Remy's brothers and sisters, they function like Django's squad. Then you have the lab rat Git, Mustafa the head waiter, and the cooks Lalo, Horst, Larus, and Pompidou. You have the crazy old woman Mabel, the health inspector, who's a bit unlucky, Francois, Soline Leclerc, the food critic, and you have Ambrice de Mignon, which is Anton Ego's waiter, and his last name, Mignon, suggests that Anton Ego is a greater evil. Then you have Mrs. Ego and Talon Labart. And we skip now to plot. And plot has to do with what actually happens in the movie. How did Anton Ego turn from being this old, angry fella to being, appreciating life to a greater extent? And how did Colette get from hating Linguine into loving him? What actually happened in the movie? And if you want to know that, you could either watch the movie or you can go to Internet Movie Database, www.imdb.com, if you don't remember. We won't be covering that right now. Point of view. We are experiencing the story of Remy and Linguine directly. We are not being told about it by a narrator, such as in Desperate Housewives. So there is no narrator. We are experiencing the film through sounds and animations. Remy and Linguine are the center through large parts of the story, although sometimes they are not on screen, others are. Also, we get to know what Remy thinks. So I would argue that there is a limited omniscient point of view, that is, limited to Remy's thoughts. Now, to say this in a clearer way, we know what Remy is thinking, what is going through his head, which is mostly about talking to an imaginary Gusto, but we don't know what any of the other characters in the movie thinks. Theme. There is definitely a love theme in this movie, a love relationship going on between Linguine and Colette. This became realized by the help or forth of the rat Remy. There's also the love of food. Good cooking comes from skill, but also from the heart. And the movie is about having a genuine love of food, mostly not in a bad, unhealthy way, like Emile. It is not about gorging oneself on food, but about the delightful sensations which arise from eating gourmet food. It's about experiencing the different flavors playing together in the mouth, blending together in a symphony of tastes and infinite delight. Although Chef Gusteau also seems to love food a little bit more than most. Anton Ego at the end tasted a ratatouille that warmed his cold heart. This reminded him of a dish that he tasted when he was a little boy. So good food can be about culture, about feelings, or even memories. And then there is the obvious theme of cooking, and Gusteau's slogan is Everyone can cook. This is being repeated several times throughout the movie. Obviously, cooking is a major, if not the biggest, theme of the entire movie. I would argue that there is a theme called cleanliness, because you are never done cooking until you are done cleaning up. Um, so cleanliness definitely is a theme, since wet rats are involved in the process of cooking. This shows some controversies and contrasts, not to mention that it is rather disgusting. Linguine has to trust a rat, and Remy has to trust a human. So these natural enemies have to work together, which makes the movie about a friendship-trust relationship. Django shows Remy some rat corpses. Remy is horrified by this, but still he decides to continue trusting Linguine. At some point, Linguine grows arrogant and abandons Remy. Remy takes his revenge by raiding the restaurant with his brothers and sisters. Later on, though, Linguine and Remy start to cooperate again. This shows what is true, that most friendships suffer minor setbacks, but strong ones endure. The last thing I would like to point out is that ethics is also, to some degree, a theme. As Gustav says, cooks make, thieves take, thereby implying that stealing is wrong. Generally, rats are thieves. They steal food, while cooks are seen as the opposite. They make food. As ethics is something which requires a bit of maturity, it is taught to the audience via an old, wise person, Gustav, who functions somewhat as Remy's bad conscience. He is like the little voice in our head, which corrects us in everyday life and tells us things like, stealing is bad, or damn, I must finish my homework, and so on. This little voice in our head is an idealist, maybe, which explains why in Remy's head it's what he looks up to most, namely a successful chef.